The day Xylia Schultz got out of prison, they carried her out on a stretcher. She was so thin she barely looked human. Her right arm just dangled there with no strength in it, and both her legs were covered in blood. 3 months earlier, somebody had set Xylia up, fake testimony, and threw her in jail in place of the real Schultz daughter, Tessa Schultz. Inside, they cut the tendons in the hand Xylia once held a scalpel with. The legs that once carried her to international championships had been beaten until she could hardly stand. Xylia was ready to give up on everything, until her husband, Connor Ford, pulled every string he could to drag her out. When Connor saw her like that, he froze for a second, then stumbled out of the car and wrapped her up in his arms.
Echo, Xilia, d'ici selon me.
I came too late. End quote. Connor and #39's voice shook as he followed the medics into the ambulance. This man, who was usually all cold composure, actually cried. Xylia had only ever seen him cry twice before, once on their wedding day, once when their son Sonny Ford was born. That tear fell on Xylia and #39's face, and her own emotions finally broke. She hadn't and #39T cried when she was beaten. She hadn't and #39T cried when they cut through her hand. But now she couldn't and #39T hold it back. Xylia buried herself in Connor and #39's chest, breathing in the one scent that always calmed her down. She thought and #39, at least I still have my husband, my son, my family who love me. And #39, Connor and #39's eyes turned red as he held her tight and swore, his voice raw. End quote. Xylia, I and #39, find whoever framed you. I and #39, clear your name. End quote. Pressed against his chest, listening to the tremor in his voice, Xylia and #39's shattered heart softened just a little. With a husband and a son who loved her this much, she didn't and #39T care that the Schultz family only had eyes for Tessa, or that her ex-fiancé had left her behind. None of that mattered anymore. Connor lowered his head, guilt in every word. End quote. If I hadn't and #39T asked you to drive out that day, they wouldn't and #39T have had anything to pin on you. They wouldn't and #39T have had a way to charge you with a hit and run. End quote. Xylia shook her head. She thought, and #39, how could this be his fault? Everyone knew Connor was one of the best husbands out there. After we married, he never let me lift a finger. He spoiled me in every way. And #39, he even worried I was working too hard, kept telling me to quit, said he and #39D take care of me. The heir to the Ford family, and he still loved me like this.
Everyone enviait me.
And #39, but now, after what happened to me, do I even deserve him anymore? And #39, Xylia and #39's voice cracked as she whispered and quote, I and #39, am scared I and #39, never be able to hold a scalpel again. I and #39, am scared I and #39, never dance again. End quote. Connor and #39's eyes filled up again. His voice shook as he tried to soothe her. End quote. If you can and #39T hold a scalpel, then I and #39 take care of you for the rest of our lives. End quote. If you can and #39T dance, then Dawn and #39T, honestly, it always drove me jealous when other men stared at you anyway. End quote. Xylia forced a bitter little smile. Connor had always loved her legs, and now they were nothing but scars. Once the wounds healed, they would still look ruined. She figured he and #39D get tired of looking at them eventually. At the hospital, Xylia finally saw Sonny. The boy threw himself at her bedside and broke down crying. End quote. Mom, I and #39, am sorry. I didn't and #39T know what I said would end up as testimony. It was all my fault. I misremembered. If I could trade my legs for yours, I would. End quote. Xylia and #39's mind went back to 3 months earlier, when she and #39D been accused of hit and run. Sonny, who had been called as a witness, said he remembered her leaving the house that day. Sonny had always been the kid who listened, who acted way older than his age. That little grown-up side of him made him seem a bit distant sometimes. But now, he was crying so hard his face was a mess, snot and tears everywhere. He looked pitiful. For all his early maturity, he was still just a kid.
He's mixed.
Download CC Search FGK 00062. Watch the follow-up.